Okay, we should be live. Um, my ears are still ringing. I was in a gun range all day yesterday. Probably not something I want to talk about, um, but my ears are still sore. Um, I mean, I had protective ear covering, but you have to take it off every once in a while. So, anyway, so welcome to the stream. We're going to talk about the Nikon's purchase of Red because it's really a brilliant move and it's good for both companies. And I we have to go through some history so I can tell you why. My knowledge of this is probably better than some. Back in my previous career of printing, Fujifilm was I was the company I represented was the largest user of Fujifilm products in America in the graphics division. And therefore I made trips to Japan every 6 months, and I got to know the people of Fujifilm. I still have people I talk to in Fujifilm, and one of them and me were talking about the Nikon, and one of his buddies works there, and he got him on the FaceTime with us, and we had a very interesting conversation about it. And I said, "Is it okay if I share it with the live stream?" He says, "Yeah, because nobody's going to be able to trace this connection, kind of since the connection between me to the guy at Fuji to the guy at Nikon." So it's there's a plan, and I think it's a pretty good one. You know, the devil's in the details, and implementing it, but it's a pretty good thing, I think. Um, so that's why I know some information, and I'm gonna just put this up on the screen. I can do it this way, but I can't read that type. It's just too small, so I'll try to put it full screen like that. And I think I can read this. It says simply, Nikon hereby announces it entered into an agreement to acquire 100% of the outstanding membership interest in Red. Now, from my understanding, this was not a cash deal, it was a stock deal. So, James, who's the founder of Red, Jared, who's the current president of Red, both had substantial interest in the company, and now they own. I believe James is going to be one of them is going to be on the board of Nikon, and they own quite a few shares of Nikon in this process when it's all said and done. And then from there on, it's a typical press release, bragging about the company, Nikon bragging about how good Red is. Um, you know, Red has a very unique place in the cinema world. I mean, Red cameras were the choice of people who couldn't afford Arri or the high-end Sonys, and said they could get a Red camera. And there's some problems with that, but let's face it, Red cameras produce excellent quality video. So if you do the audio externally, you have a sound engineer using, a sound device most likely, or a higher device, then you could compete. It's approved, Netflix approved, and it's a great camera. It's a unique camera too. They're all boxes in a sense. They're all, and then ProRes RAW, which is kind of what they're known for. Again, it's what to say about it. They've won Academy Awards for their use of their cameras, and that's a small group of people. Okay, so the key lawyers actually look at these press releases like this, and there's stuff in here that's very interesting. One of the comments that's interesting, if I can get my light Leo bot to do what I want it to do, so I want to go to the split view again. Hope you can read that. I sure can't. But down the way it says Nikon's experience in product development, exceptional reliability and know-how in image processing, as well as optical technology, I meaning lenses, and user interface, along with Red's knowledge of cinema cameras, including unique image processing technology and color science, will enable the development of distinctive products in the professional digital cinema camera market. That's the key to this whole press release right there. And that's what we're going to talk about. What are the keys? Why is it a good deal? And that kind of stuff. So why it's a good deal is Red was at the mercy of Canon to use their RF mount. For Canon, it was a win because Canon glass RF would be something, people would therefore purchase. And a B camera from, a Canon C200 or even a C70 was not out of the question. The documentary that I was trying to get going, we were going to have one Red camera, the Komodo 6K, and then a Sony because that's the cameras I had to be the B camera. But so that's I'll end the speculation. The loser of this, seriously, the loser of this is Canon. Sony is the biggest fish in the water. Okay, they have all the way down to the simple cameras. Their camera parts are in iPhones and some Android phones. They have the consumer point and shoots. They have the creator cameras, the ZV line. They have the high end A74s, AR5s, the new 9. The new what is it? The really fast, the global shutter for sports photography and wildlife. So they have all these, the full spectrum, all the way up to the Sony Venice, which I understand it's as good as you get, the Venices. That's what they shot Top Gun Maverick on. So, so they cover the full spectrum, and they're the biggest fish in the water. But for the longest time, pre-video days, Nikon was the gold standard. Well, with the exception of, again, specialty cameras. The Hasselblad was what fashion photographers used because of a much bigger, medium format film. But for the vast majority of people buying cameras, Nikon was the gold standard, and Canon was second fiddle to them. Now, some people like Canon colors, and then Sony came along. And again, there's more than two players these days. But when it comes to cinema cameras, there was Arri, Sony, and then you had Red making a disruptive play in that world. So it's impressive. Red is an impressive camera with impressive technology behind it, and their cameras are 8K, 8.6K, I think to be exact, and great dynamic range, which is what with RAW, the ability to manipulate it after you shoot it is huge. So Nikon didn't have anything in that market. They've been behind the game in video. Recently their top two cameras, now the two Nikon cameras that are top tier, are good enough for commercial work, but not good enough for cinema work. Okay. Their autofocus is still behind Sony's and Canon's, and Red's is way behind. Red's behind Fuji even. So what you get when you put these two cameras together is no overlap whatsoever. There's nothing in the Red product line that's going to hurt a Nikon camera at all, and vice versa. So that's a win, hugely win. I don't want to overly brag, but Japanese companies don't jump into anything without literally a 100-year plan. I exaggerate somewhat, but not much. They are the most, their culture, their work ethic, their attention to detail, their weakness is marketing. They're generally terrible at marketing. But their build quality, I mean, I haven't bought an American car in this decade, and I don't expect I'll buy one in this decade, because Honda and Toyotas are just far superior from what I look for in a car, which is a reliable, comfortable device that gets you from point A to point B. Okay, they're great. So you've got Nikon's ability to make excellent glass. Now they don't have any really cinema glass, but you know, Fuji, which doesn't have any cameras in the, you know, they're not even up there with Nikon when it comes to video cameras. Their X4 and X5 their X5 is their top end camera. Now, and it's good. I mean, Fuji color is excellent, but that's nothing you can too much write home about in that area. So, but they have a whole lens company, Fujinon, which if you're watching a NASCAR race or you're watching an NFL game, those are those are Fujinon lenses on those cameras. The ability to go zoom from close up to a huge distance. They're about $300,000 lenses. But they also have cinema lenses. The two cinema lenses I own are, you know, Super 35 Fujinon MK lenses. So they're great lenses. Nikon has great lenses, but they're all mainly photo based. So that's still an area they're working on. So I assume the contract for using the RF lens doesn't go away when this acquisition. I'm sure there's a timetable on it. But I expect every new Red camera will have native Z lenses, Nikon's lenses. And I expect Nikon is going to pump the money it didn't use to buy Red, since it did it with stock, into cinema lenses. So that's one of the great things about this merger. They're not hurting themselves. You know, when take an example, when an oil company buys another oil company, or when a similar company. I mean, our company, my printing companies, how we grew was by acquisition. We bought another printing company. Well, the first thing you go into, you eliminate people because we outsource. You know, corporate does the purchasing. Corporate does this. You know, you come under our insurance plans. Your HR people, some of them get replaced. Generally, plant manager. You know, most people can keep their jobs, especially if we're keeping that plant open. There are some cases when we didn't, but here in this merger between Red and Nikon, there's no real overlap. I mean, Nikon's a huge company, and Red was a relatively small company. I mean, like 250 employees, I think. And that, you know, the marketing people and all that, you know, the actual guts behind it is a very small group. And one of the things against Red was reliability. Well, Nikons are solid. I mean, you're not going to have reliability problems with a Nikon camera. They're going to bring that attention to detail to Red. So they're going to learn dimming philosophy for that's a stream for another day. We're going to do a whole stream on Edward Deming and his understanding of manufacturing. But I'll give you a hint of it right now. Edward Deming was an American professor who developed the weakest link mindset of manufacturing, which is real simple. In the manufacturing process, you find the weakest link and then you upgrade that. And then you retest and you find the next weakest link and you upgrade that. And that's a continual process forever. You just keep fixing the weakest link, and that by itself will elevate your quality to the stratosphere. Of course, American companies didn't listen to him, but a company called Toyota, who was unheard of at the time, did, and then Honda, and so they finally the Americans started listening when they were just being slaughtered, beat to death by Toyota and Hondas. But they're still behind the games because they still have that mindset. I've toured facilities by Fuji, and it's that same mindset. And their attention to detail and their quality control is so much far ahead of the Germans and the Americans. It's not even funny. But they're terrible at marketing. So, but anyway, so Nikon brings all this to the table. Red brings all this to the table and doesn't hurt anybody. And they discovered all this in the lawsuit, to be quite honest. When you're in a lawsuit with somebody, you have to learn about this and that, and I don't know the details of how the lawsuit, why it ended the way it ended, but to be quite honest, the deal to merge happened because of the lawsuit. And Japanese are very honorable, they're very attention to, feelings. And when you deal with a Japanese company, it's a different process than dealing with an American company. So the Nikon brings a lot of their know-how to the table, and Red brings a little bit of that American ingenuity and marketing and push to be a disruptor to Nikon. And if they can, the key is implementation, of course, but if they can implement that and listen to both sides, they're not going to, the working title is, Red, Nikon Cinema Division. That's just a working title. What it ends up is mute, but I don't think they're going to get rid of the Red name. They'll just add the Nikon to it. The strength, in this case, the strength of the two parts is greater than in each individual strength. And for Red, for Red customers, it's a good deal. The negative part will be if you've acquired all this RF glass, that could be a problem in the future, but I think it's in the future you have to worry about that. It's not something you have to worry about right now. And, excuse me. So, it's a win with there could potentially be downsides if Nikon doesn't listen to Red about how to do things right in the cinema division. That could be a problem. But that's not typical for a Japanese company. When a Japanese company buys an American company, which happens, they're very keen on keeping the American company involved in the process. So, oops, wrong button. I expect it'll take some time, but I expect better quality control from Red. Now, Curtis Judd, which a couple was on beforehand, Curtis Judd's, he only mentioned it briefly, that neither Red nor Nikon have all that particularly good audio interfaces. So if I could give Nikon some advice, is partner with somebody to improve your audio. It's not an issue if you're using time code and you have extra. If you're using sound devices or higher, external sound, then it's not a problem. But they want to get into the pros consumer. They want to get into the people that are doing, spending $200, $300, $400, $500,000 on a movie. Okay, because that's a big business. Because that's money people can raise. They can't raise the 100 million for a Disney or a Spielberg movie. Okay, you can't. Mute point. But you can raise $400,000 or $500,000 to produce a movie in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, and they don't want to. They want maybe a one audio guy, but instead of having to worry about it, and you have to have time code if you plan on Netflix. Kind of sets the standard in all the streaming services. They all kind of just copy Netflix because they kind of invented and they're the biggest player in the business. So pretty much everybody's still using time code. And so if you're using time code and you're using external audio with time code, then merging the two is a piece of cake. It's not an issue whatsoever. But they really need to improve their audio inputs, especially on the Red. They do have, ideally, if I was in consulting with them, I would cut a deal with somebody like Sound Devices to have a attachment to a Red camera to feed in, XLR inputs into it from, again, a Sound Devices device, so that you get the best audio, the good audio already in there. It saves a step and saves money, because for the small guy, they're not going to be able to afford, the high end audio guys. They're going to be somebody that may not have an 888. They may only have a mixed pre series, okay, which is still great audio. It doesn't have all the controls, but if you can bypass that and capture really good audio that's moldable inside the actual video file, you save some serious costs. Because if you're traveling, or if you got to feed this person, you got to pay for that person to get to the set and stuff. That's where all the costs are. As a guy that's been trying to get a documentary off the ground, I can't tell you how many. This spreadsheet, if I got paid by the revisions, I'd be rich, because I revised this spreadsheet so many times, something funny. But the costs are the equipment rental. It's not that bad. It's people. It's people are the cost. And so if you can reduce your audio crew, and if you can get better audio on a Red camera, because a Red camera will give you as good a quality as you need for what you're shooting. Okay, it's not Arri quality, it's not Venice quality, but there's so little difference between that, that anybody besides the pros would know the difference. And by the way, this is a green shirt. I've covered myself for St. Patrick's Day. But that's kind of my spiel on the Red deal. I think it's going to be good for Red. I think it's going to be good for Red users. I think there'll be hiccups, okay, but I don't think there'll be major ones, because I think Red will continue still being Red, and there'll still be high dynamic range. Because one of the things remember is that Nikon currently gets their sensors from Sony, as does Fuji. Red, that's the one thing, they have their own sensors, and they can scale that sensor down to help improve the Nikon. It'll probably still be a Red. They're the same company now. Where they put it, it could be just like the way Sony did. They had the A7S III, And then you had the FX3, and the guts are the same. So the red one would be the FX3, and then the Nikon one would be the A7S3, but basically they're same camera. Same menu, same everything. Just a different sticker on it. So, a different division. So I expect a camera in that. The goal is to have a camera in that space, big time, and therefore, and it be a red sensor, not a Sony sensor that Nikon normally uses. So, if anybody's got any questions, I have more information about that, but I just don't know how interesting it is but all in all, I think it's a great deal. I think it makes a whole lot of sense. It's because Nikon doesn't have a presence at all. Red doesn't have I mean, the cheapest red camera you can get. In fact, let me pop open my browser here and go to B&H Photo, where I buy everything, it seems like. And if you type in red, hit enter, and hit their cheapest camera is the Komodo. If I go lowest to high, yeah, the cheapest red camera, red digital cinema Komodo 6K with a Canon RF mount, is $6,000. The starter kit is $7,500. Production kit is $8,500. And then if you get the Komodo X, which is sort of version 2, you're up to $10,000. And then it just keeps going up from there. So again, it's way above FX3, even FX6 prices, really. But dynamic range, I mean, if you're everything shot cinema wise, it's now 4K minimum. Okay. And the trouble with the FX3 and the FX6 is they're 4K cameras. So you have to get it exactly right. You don't have much play because you know what digital zoom is. You can tweak it a little bit and nobody will notice, but you can't go huge. The advantage of a 6K camera and a 4K time deal is you can crop without losing detail at all. And that is a big plus. So, I mean, we wanted our main camera to be at least 6K, maybe even 8. So we have that room in post to make the edit work. And Sony doesn't have, besides you have to get up into their $25,000 camera, I think, to get the 6K or 8K. So, loser, Canon, because Canon cameras are not used hardly by anybody in the cinema field. They don't sell. I mean, Curtis bought one. A few other people bought C200s. I think they have some. They're C cameras, but they're not. You know, C70, C200. You know, that's all you get. So, you know, even B&H calls an R5 a cinema camera, and it's not. I mean, it's like an FX3. It's, you know, semi-cinema. So anyway, that's kind of my take on all this. I really don't have, Hollywood knows Red. They use Reds. They're not gonna be disappointed by this. Nikon's a very smart company, as is most Japanese companies of that size, and they're going to manage it well, I think. Especially if Red helps them with their marketing. They'll be. I think it's a great. I think it's a great deal. I could be wrong, but I'd bet money on it. It's going to be. You know, we have this. If I'm still around and we have this, follow up in 2 years, I think they'll be growing market share, which is the goal, right? So that's it. If there's no questions, we'll get out of here early. I don't see any questions on my question feed. Oh, questions. I gotta look at both places, but I don't see any. So, anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you probably next week. I'll come up with a title. It'll be on the website, theseniortech.com. It's where I put everything in very simple HTML page. It's simple, but it's easy to change that way. So I'm all for simple. Okay. Well, everybody have a great weekend. And audio buff. You crack me up, audio buff. You're building speakers right now. So that's what I build the set. I build this set during Curtis's live stream. I put it all together while he's talking. Especially when they're doing the audio thing, because my ears are still ringing from the gun range. I wasn't going to participate in the tuning thing, that's for sure. Anyway, so everybody have a wonderful week, and audio, if you're going to have a really busy week here in 2 weeks, how many services you're going to have on Sunday? One of the things I'm planning on do shortly, I'm working on right now, is go to a studio and do a live show there, talking about studio equipment. The other thing, I was going to maybe talk to one of the artists and sit in on one of their studios, a home office for a local artist, and talk to them about what they want from a sound guy and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in my mind. But again, we have a Facebook group. If you have questions, email account is really simple, info@theseniortech.com. And that's all. Everybody, talk to you later. If I press the right button, the info and the website is all on this slide.